Here I am, climbing up, feeling great, getting love. Here I go, risk it all, be worth it now, and that's for sure. Watch me as I rock a team, flying high.
Alright, we're back. Fight Talk Down Under, episode 6. I'm Dan Meehan from Fight News Australia, and of course my co-host is Lockjaw Justin Van Heerden. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good. It's Monday, so that means that the afternoon was filled with some sparring rounds, and it was another day of trying to run away from Alex Volkanovski in a very small cut-off area that we were sparring in. So it didn't work. I couldn't quite get away. I just had to get in there and get stuck in and do the rounds. But no, it was good. You know, we got some good bodies on the mats. Boys are all putting the work in. Colby's obviously fighting April 23rd on Eternal. We got Trent Girdham down at the moment at Freestyle, so it's good to have Trent back doing his thing. And yeah, obviously Alex is 4 weeks out from his title fight with the Korean Zombies, so it's all happening. But other than that, yeah, can't complain. Ready to talk about some fights.
Brilliant. I can imagine you must have some miserable rounds training with or sparring with the UFC featherweight champion.
Yeah. There's that, you know, there's that sort of approach to the rounds where you're kind of like, almost you're like, okay, I'm going to be the nail, but can I move the nail enough so that I don't get hammered too hard too quickly? That's sort of the only question. No, but it's good though, because obviously, you know, Alex he's obviously my teammate, but he's also like one of my coaches. So whenever I am doing these rounds with him, the things that I'm working on, especially the stand-up side of things, you know, when I'm sort of trying to utilize the things that he's teaching me and breaking down for me, you know, if I'm obviously with someone that's at his level and with the standard of that he's at and the fight IQ that he has and the vision that he has, you can't expect to sort of just go in there and do those things that you're learning and just be able to pull them off. But I like to think that every time I am doing those things and trying to implement them when I'm sparring him, you know, sometimes I might do something as simple as an exit that we've been working on, you know, and I might get that off once or twice in the round, and that's a win for me because that means I'm starting to apply it and it's starting to work, it's starting to click, you know. So that's always the benefit, and he's always good after the fact for breaking stuff down, pointing out some things that you did well, highlighting some things that you sort of need to sort of switch up a bit, and why he was able to capitalize in those moments, you know. And that's sort of something that people don't really get to see, I guess, because it's kind of happens behind the scenes, is the guy's effort and time that he puts into not only, you know, his own sort of training and retaining his belt and being a world champion and sort of staying there and staying at the top of the heap. It's also what he's sort of doing with everyone else in the gym. Like more often than not, after we're done training, the guy's sitting there breaking stuff down, going back and forth with everyone, you know, just putting his time and effort in. And that's always really cool. So yeah, I said to him the other day, it's like, it's always beneficial. It's always kind of like a blessing for me. I kind of like do my rounds, and then after the fact, I'm kind of like, okay, I did maybe this one thing, I did that really well. Okay, let's take that away. Let's file it away and let's just keep going. So yeah, it's always good.
Yeah, it's just the little wins, isn't it? When you're sparring with someone who's maybe a little bit more advanced than you are, it's just those little wins just get you through, and that's brilliant. Like that experience of training with someone on the level of Alex Volkanovski, that's you know, money can't buy experience like that. So yeah, that's great insight.
Yeah, and you know, he's lucky enough to train with me, so it's like it goes both ways. You know, I'm Matty helping the champ, he's helping me. You know, it's a good setup. I mean, obviously I'm kidding, but nah, it's very good. The dudes are just an all round great human being, so I feel very blessed.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, we might kick this one off by recapping the week that was, and speaking of great human beings, the first cab off the rank was at one Lights Out on Friday night was Martin the Situation Ewan getting a big win over Kirill Gorobets. It was a Ukrainian guy who was making his one debut, and Martin Ewan in the winners column for the first time in 3 years. You know, he looked strong and he looked composed. Pulled off a TKO early in round 3, and Maybe Gorobets was was a little bit overmatched. You know, he used a bit of a, I guess, like a Dominic Cruz sort of movement style, and probably proved to be a bit inefficient for him in the end. He looked a bit tired towards the end of round two, and you know, Martin Nguyen was just with all the experience in the world. I think he's something like 16 fights into his one tenure, so yeah, he managed to capitalise and put him away early. So yeah, how did you view that one?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think, you know, a lot of the stuff that the movement that was happening in the fight, I think it was just wasted movement and wasted energy. You know, Martin was maintaining a good range, a good distance, and was effective in the exchanges and effective at when he was expending energy and when he wasn't. Whereas, you know, on the other foot, it was kind of just wasted movement, just consistent movement, just sapping the gas tank. You know, Dominic Cruz, when he does it, there's a system behind it. Like there's videos of him breaking it down, talking about it, why he does certain things when he does it, why he's shifting to one point, why he's moving to another. Like it's to set up certain strikes, it's to set up certain defensive measures. He's not just moving for the sake of moving, and obviously he's a special individual. So for other people to try and mimic that just without actually understanding the sort of stuff behind it, or just moving for the sake of moving, yeah, it's obviously gonna be a detriment to you. And we actually spoke about this in the gym the other day. You know, you like so many times you see people come forward, they sort of engage, they get out, and then they're kind of just moving on the outside and just kind of staying that bit further out. And it's like they're not keeping themselves within range. They're not aware of sort of what the person in front of them is doing and the problem that's presented to themselves, because they're just kind of focused on, okay, I've got in, okay, I've got to get all the way out, and I've just got to keep moving. But you don't always have to. I think you see that a lot. You see that a lot across the board. Obviously, you see that on like an amateur level, but then you see that still with some of these guys at the top level, world class sort of thing, where the person is just moving or getting that bit further out and just kind of wasting energy, wasting opportunities. And I think that's what Martin was able to capitalize on. And then obviously, yeah, they eventually broke him down and then put him away. But yeah, it was a bit of a strange matchup for them to kind of put together. Obviously, Martin's an absolute animal, and I think it was always going to be a tall task for the Ukrainian man in this one against Martin. But yeah, I'm happy to see him get the win. I'm happy to see he's back in the winner column. I'm happy to see that he kind of looked like the Martin that we're used to. He looked loose. He looked composed. He was confident. Obviously, he took advantage of the exchanges as they came, and then, you know, got the win. So it's the first step back towards a belt for him, and I'm sure he's going to carry the momentum going forward.
Yeah, I think Gorobets was on something like a 10-fight win streak or something going into it, and it was all his fights were back in the Ukraine. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, I think, in some of those local promotions.
Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that.
The 10-fight win streak in the Ukraine. I don't know if people have gone down the rabbit hole a bit with some of these fighters, but if you go look at their records and you look at some of their fights, there's some question marks next to some of these fights. There's some fights where there's some 2-round fights on a lot of these guys' records. There's some opponents that they fought who are like, I'm talking like 1-13, you know, 1-9, 1-16 type. It's a bit of a weird situation. Even the great Khabib, as great as he is and as incredible as his tenure was in the UFC and his MMA career finished sort of in such a great way, even his record, you look at that early record, there's some questionable sort of fights on there, but that's what you got to do sometimes. So, you know, whether, you know, that's the risk you're sort of taking. You know, you pad your record with some of these fights, you get to these sort of bigger promotions, and then you're going to get exposed. But obviously there's guys that take the boxing approach, that have the talent, have the skill, have the ability, that are of like a world championship caliber, like Khabib, that, you know, showcased that when they did fight these sort of high level dudes. But on the weekend, I think you saw he got a bit exposed when he stood in there against Martin. It was a bit of a whole sort of another level for him. And that's what happens, you know. It's all well and good to do that just to sort of get yourself there, but once it's all said and done, when you're in that cage and there's an absolute killer in front of you that trains with some of the best people in the world, who's coached by some of the best people in the world, who's in the best shape that he's ever been in, and he comes in there ready to win because he knows he has to. Like, as you said, he hasn't won for a few years and needed this one. You can't hide from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess it begs the question, doesn't it? Like, obviously, One Championship do their research when they're signing fighters, but you look at someone like Kirill Gorobets. Was he there sort of fighting Martin Nguyen on merit, or was this more of a layup for Martin Nguyen? Like, he's a big star in One Championship. They get a guy like Gorobets, they can sell it as this guy coming from the Ukraine on a 10-fight win streak, and but really he's there to sort of kind of get Martin Nguyen back on the winning track and back into the title picture, because guys like that, they move the needle in One Championship, and there's no denying that at the end of the day. So maybe they thought really highly of Kirill Gorobets going into it, or maybe it was a bit of a layup for Martin, but he definitely looked overmatched in the end.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's probably the best way to put it with what you said there. I think that's kind of the best approach. It's like, it's either they capitalize on the fact that he wasn't a 10-fight win streak and they could hype it up and sell it that way, or they kind of were just like, Martin's one of our biggest stars. We kind of need him to get back into the winners column so we can start building him up with some bigger fights moving forward and tee up the possibility of rematching someone like Tan Le.
Yeah, or even a third fight with Christian Lee as well. There's always some fun fights for Martin Nguyen, and he even called out Christian Lee for a grappling match after the fight. So I thought that was a bit of an interesting one. But he's got 2 wins over Christian Lee already. But we know Christian Lee's a huge superstar in One Championship, so it'd be an easy sell, that sort of matchup, even a third time.
I mean, I'd watch it 100%. I'd watch it. Both guys are always good to watch. Even regardless of the result of their fights, it's always entertaining to watch.
Absolutely. Also representing Australia on the card was Josh Time Bomb Tonner. He took on Zhang the Fighting Rooster Paimian, who was undefeated coming into his one debut, and he's only 18 years old, and he looked unreal on the day. He put Tonner down 3 times en route to a second round stoppage, and Paimian, he looked lightning fast. He really looked the goods. So it's an interesting prospect, that one, and again, at only 18 years old, that's a pretty scary prospect when he's pretty much just run straight through a 33-year-old experienced fighter like Josh Tonner. So what do you think of Paimian? Yeah,
well, I mean, that's the thing. The dude's 18. He came into that One Championship circle to fight in front of millions of people and put on a hell of a show. So yeah, obviously that 18, man, that's insane. Like, imagine where that kid could potentially be 5-10 years from now. If he's he's 18 now and he's performing that way already, and he's signed to one of the biggest promotions in the world. It's like the sky's the limit at this point. And One Championship will for sure look to capitalize on that and kind of build him up and ignite the path to build him to sort of into this big star.
Absolutely, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of Tenshin Nasukawa, who's obviously a young prodigy from Japan as well, who's came into the sort of Ryzen and the big promotions in Asia at around the same age, and he sort of had the same sort of thing. He was just all just lightning speed. He had the bleach blonde hair as well. As Zhang sort of had the same. The same kind of look in the end, and obviously we've seen what Tenshin managed to do in the end. He went undefeated in kickboxing. He obviously had that exhibition loss to Floyd Mayweather in boxing, which was a bit farcical in the end. But he's actually, I think he's made a full-time transition into boxing as well. But so that'll be an interesting watch. But Paimian kind of reminded me of Tenshin.
Yeah, there's definitely similarities there. Every time I think about that Tenshin fight with Floyd Mayweather, I don't know. I don't understand how I'm meant to believe that this kid got in there. I understand he's a smaller fighter. Floyd was a lot bigger. Floyd, obviously, it's Floyd Mayweather. The dude can box, and he hits very hard. I know towards the later end of his career, he didn't knock many people out, but I'm sure the dude still hits hard. You ever see a video of that dude just throwing a jab at the boxing bag in his gym, and you're kind of like, don't want to get hit by that. But to think about that fight again was just, that's hilarious, because Tenshin kind of he oversold it a bit. He looked like it was like his first time Is his first day on the job in the WWE, and he kind of just went a bit overboard. Where even like the people that are into it were kind of like, nah, it's too much. So yeah, but I definitely think there's comparisons to be drawn between the two, and yeah, I hope that the sort of momentum continues.
Yeah, tension sort of went for a bit too much on those knockdowns, didn't he? We're getting a bit off track here, but it just kind of he oversold it, didn't he? And it just it made it look. He might have been legitimately hurt. I don't know, but and like you say, there was a few weight divisions between the two of them, but yeah, it looked a bit suspect. It looked like it might have been there was a bit of theatre behind it, and yeah, maybe that was potentially a part of it, but who knows? We can't really speculate on that. But yeah, there's definitely some stylistic similarities with the Fighting Rooster there, which is exciting for One Championship fans. So, I could talk about One Championship all night. I love it. I love Asian MMA. Like I don't know. There's a bit of like theatre about Asian MMA promotion. So I absolutely love it. And while we're talking about one, I just wanted to touch on the main event from the weekend. It was Tan Le versus Gary Tonin.
Yep.
It was a title. It was a featherweight title fight there. Tan Lee's obviously won the belt off Martin Nguyen, and he was defending against Gary Tonin, who was obviously a highly decorated grappler. So it was a fascinating matchup. Tan Lee's sort of the grappling's been a little bit of his Achilles heel over time, but he certainly had no problems with Gary Tonin in the end. And I've said this before a few times on I think in interviews and stuff, but I feel like the UFC missed a trick in not signing Tan Le. Like he's 36 years old now. He's he's obviously doing well in One Championship, but he was right under the UFC's nose a couple of times. He was on the Ultimate Fighter. I think he lost in the sort of the qualifying round, to get into the house, and they had him on the Contender Series as well. He won his fight on points, and they didn't sign him. And now he's he's over in One Championship. He's sort of their poster boy now. And I really think there's some talent there in Tan Le. He's got incredible punching power, as we saw there. He managed to knock out Gary Tonin just from top position in a sort of grappling exchange, kind of like with a little hammer fist there, as Gary was going for a leg. But I don't know. What do you think of Tan Le and the main event there from Friday night?
I like the guy. I mean, I've been following that dude along his sort of journey along since well before he was even on the Ultimate Fighter, even on the radar for being with the UFC and stuff like that. Him and his brother, like the work that they've done over the years for him to get to the point where he is now. It's certainly paying dividends, and I'm happy for the dude that he's in One Championship. I'm happy that he's the world champion for One Championship, and he's kind of out here doing his thing, because he deserved to be on a big stage in front of lots of people doing that. Never met the guy, but seems like a genuinely cool human being. And from what I've seen from people that have dealt with him and spoken to him and been around him, it kind of confirms that. So yeah, I'm stoked for the guy. I agree with you. I think the UFC missed an opportunity for him. To get him in competing in the UFC against some of the top people. Looking at the landscape of how he'd match up with some of the people in the UFC, I think the guy would have done quite well. Although I do think you can kind of see still, you can understand why there's a separation with some of these weight divisions. You can kind of see a separation between the UFC sort of guys and then some of these other promotions. Like there's obviously outliers and exceptions. You look at Masasi at the moment in Bellator. I still think you chuck that guy back in the mix in the UFC and put him in the middleweight division, and he beats pretty much everyone outside of Rob Whittaker. And obviously, I think Adesanya is a tough matchup for the guy. But yeah, but then someone like Tan Le, could he compete with the Max Holloways, the Volkanovskis? In the UFC, I don't know, but obviously, yeah, that's an opportunity that we've all had snatched away because One Championship was his home in the end. And yeah, stoked for the dude. He's doing well. Obviously, Gary Tonin was undefeated coming into this fight. The fight was hyped up to be this big fight, which it was, and I kind of expected if there was any grappling exchanges in this fight. That Tonin was going to handedly just take advantage of them and be able to submit Tan and get him out of there. But obviously he stayed disciplined. The grappling exchanges and sort of engagements like that were on his terms. And then you saw ultimately the old adage come into play that you can't play jiu-jitsu in an MMA fight from the bottom and just leave your face open, because he just threw the legs to the side and punched Gary Tonon really, really hard in the face, and put him away. And it was a crazy sort of finishing sequence, and it was rough to kind of. It's always rough when you see guys get put out that way, but at the same time, as when it's someone like Gary Tonon, you can kind of shrug it off and be like, well, that's just it is what it is, as Max Holloway would say. But yeah, so I'm excited to see what they do next and who they offer up to the champ next, and then I'm excited to see what they do with Tonon, because they're obviously expanding their grappling side of things at One Championship as well. I saw there was a bit of back and forth between Tonon and Ryan Hall. Obviously, Ryan Hall did a lot of work with Tan in the prep for this. I've seen some of the other old Danaher Death Squad members go back and forth with Ryan as well, and Tan and his team and sort of stuff like that. So, yeah, who knows? Maybe that opens the door for like a grappling match of some sort for Tonon with Ryan Hall. I know Ryan signed to the UFC, so it would depend on Dana White giving him the all clear and all that sort of stuff. But that might be something that we can see for Tonon moving forward. Maybe, or I don't know. He might continue with this MMA thing and rebound and kind of get himself back to a title fight. But there's a lot of questions up in the air after that main event. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think, Tonon's sort of a fun guy in One Championship. There's, they're obviously, as you mentioned there, they're aggressively sort of expanding their roster of grapplers and, through all some of the new signings that are coming through. So there'll be a bit more competition for someone like Gary Tonon going forward. But typically a lot of the fighters from the Asian continent, they come from more of a striking background. So someone like Gary Tonon is always going to be a problem in a place like One Championship. But we might just quickly touch on the main event as well. We had Bibiano Fernandez relinquishing his belt finally at 41 years old to John Lineker, who's obviously a UFC veteran. It was a bit of a scrappy affair in the end. They kind of just played rock'em sock'em robots a little bit there, the two of them, and Bibi gave as good as he could, as good as he got. In the end, he managed to put Lineker down early on, but in the end, I think Lineker was just a bit younger, a bit faster, and a bit fitter in the end. And Lineker looks bulky in One Championship. I don't want to speculate too much. I don't know what the drug testing procedures are like in One Championship. I know they do hydration tests and they're very diligent with that sort of thing. But Lineker looks a very different body type in One Championship to what he did in the UFC. But what did you make of that one?
Look, you don't have to speculate. I'll say it. Bibiano and John Lineker look like they're on all sorts of special supplements.
He certainly didn't look like your average 41-year-old. I'll definitely say that.
He looks better than me with his shirt off, and I'm 28, so that should answer some of those questions. And I'm, probably in the best shape of my life, doing work with my nutritionist and my strength and conditioning team, and I'm like looking at that dude, going, okay, you're 41 and you look like that. Obviously, Lineker and Bibi got in there and scrapped it out, and both were doing some big punches, some looping shots, some haymakers were thrown. Lineker got put down, was able to kind of gather himself, get back to his feet, and then he ultimately put Bibi away and took the title. But I certainly have some questions about their testing protocols, and have some questions about that. But it was a good fight, That sort of stuff outside the cage kind of questions aside, it was a good fight. It was a good scrap. Bibi got after it and, didn't just, didn't go willingly, I'd say. The man was there. He was all for it. He was throwing some big shots himself, landed a few takedowns. Lineker was able to stay sort of composed and safe in those grappling exchanges and when it was on the ground. And even, like I said, when he got put down, he was able to kind of catch himself and reset and then get back to sort of throwing those big bombs that we've been known to see him land, hands of stone. He certainly lived up to that and put Bibi away and won himself a world title. So, went from being in the UFC and kind of, putting a few good fights in and overall having a sort of mediocre run to now the guy's a world champion and fighting one championship in front of millions of people. Hopefully, well, I can imagine they're paying him quite a fair bit of money as well after, bringing him over from the UFC. So it's all happening for the dude. I think, especially for this fight, it was always going to be like a crazy fight like this. I didn't see this going the distance or ending in a decision. I think there was a bit of back and forth from the two blokes as well. They're both Brazilians, both had a lot on the line. And you see that every time when you, even in any sort of capacity, when you see two Brazilians fighting each other, it's a bit like in the boxing world when you see two Mexicans fighting each other. It's like, it's usually violent, it's usually all out, and there's usually a lot of pride on the line. So, yeah, it kind of lived up to the hype for me.
Definitely, yeah, it was definitely fun while it lasted. Now, moving on from one championship, actually, we've probably just got to touch on the PFL here. I didn't get too many further details on Aaron Blackie. We discussed this in episode 5, just how he's obviously had the visa issue, trying to get to the first week of the Challenger Series, and
yep.
I'm told I did speak to his manager, and I'm told he is going to be rebooked on the Challenger Series. I don't know exactly how that works. He was replaced in his fight in week 1 there, so I don't have a date as to when he's going to be back in PFL, but it looks like he will be back in PFL. So that's good news for Aaron Blackie. We kind of speculated whether he was going to have to come back to the local scene and sort of bide his time until next season in the PFL, but it sounds like he's going to get another opportunity. So that's good news for him. But this week we've got New Zealand's BJ Bland. He's taking on a guy called Damir Furhadbegovic.
Oh, nailed that! You nailed that. That sounds
that was good.
How
that was all right.
I would say it in
don't
my
ask
brain.
me to say it again because I even rehearsed that one, and it was still a bit of a struggle. But details on him are a little bit scarce. I know he's based in the US. Looks like he trains at the MMA Lab, which is also home to Jared Cannonier and Drakkar Close and Benson Henderson. So he's obviously got some decent training behind him. He's 5-2-1. BJ Bland's 16-10. So that should be an interesting one. But what do you make of Aaron Blackie and BJ Bland?
Well, it's good news that Aaron Blackie is going to get rebooked. I hope that is the case and that happens for the guy, so you can get after it and at least have his opportunity to try and go out there and try and get after it and hopefully try and secure a contract with the PFL. The BJ Bland thing, that fight is interesting for me. I think BJ is going to go out there and put on a show, but at the moment, it's Monday night here for us that we're recording, but today the guy, a bunch of his teammates, Brad Riddell, Adesanya, everyone, they're all putting up posts to try and share for the US Embassy in New Zealand to give him back his passport. All his visas and everything have been approved. The guy's good to go, but they haven't returned his passport. So at the moment, the guy can't actually fly out to get to the United States. And even when they do get it back to him this week sometime, it's pretty much going to be a late flight, get there, still be jet lagged, cut the weight, and then get in there and fight. So that's pretty, even if it does come together, which I hope it does, it's going to be a tough task for the guy. And yeah, it's a pretty shit situation, but hopefully, the guy can, hopefully he gets his passport, he can get there and he can actually get in there and perform and showcase what he's capable of. He's obviously quite talented, trains us to kickboxing. He's got world-class training partners, world champion level fighters across disciplines. So yeah, let's all obviously hope that comes together and we get to see BJ perform and hopefully secure a contract. I mean, because, the guy's fighting for a contract in the PFL, like all these guys are, but you're fighting for the potential opportunity that you're going to sign at the PFL and then be part of that $1 million Grand Prix. You're fighting, potentially working your way to $1 million. And that's life-changing for anyone, especially, likable people like BJ Bland and Aaron Blackie who can potentially, use that to change their life, but continue to change other people's lives as well.
Absolutely. I didn't know that about BJ Bland. So there you go. That's a tough situation. It's kind of be a bit similar to Dan Hooker's situation. I can't remember which fight that was.
With Nasrat.
Fight, maybe?
It was with Nasrat. Yeah, they both had visa issues and ultimately both of them had to fly in real late, make weight, and then get in there and scrap. And then obviously for Nasrat at the time, his mother passed away. So it was both guys had a crazy sort of lead up to that fight. And now BJ's in a similar position. So let's hope that the US Embassy in New Zealand figure this out, give the guy his passport, and obviously, he's one of the Anzacs, so we want to see him get in there, do his thing, and do well. So I hope it all sort of works out.
Absolutely, fingers crossed for BJ Bland there. But in the local scene this weekend, while we're recapping the weekend, we had two events from Urban Fight Night. We had Diamondback, we had XFC, and then down here in Melbourne we had Bushido Fight Night last night as well. So it was a big weekend in the local scene. But does anything sort of stand out for you?
Yeah, so obviously the Friday night Urban Fight Night event, the main event got scrapped. Michael Barber was meant to take on Darwin Sagrit in the main event for a bantamweight title. Darwin had some issues cutting weight. Believe he went to hospital, was having seizures, stuff like that. Unfortunate. That would have been a cool fight to watch play out. Michael's a former opponent. I did speak to him sort of in the lead up to the fight, and he's pretty hyped about it. He was excited to get in there and fight Darwin, and he was pretty adamant. He was like, one of us is going to sleep, so that's the only way the fight's going to go. It's either going to be me or him, but it's going to be violent. So I was real hyped up for the fight. Obviously, wish Darwin the best. Hope he recovers. Hope he's all good after this sort of unfortunate incident that's occurred while weight cutting. But at the same time, I hope it's a bit of a wake-up call and gets, the right people around him and does it the right way. I hope that he does have that already, but if he doesn't, for sure, if this is something that's happened to you, you're going to have to do that moving forward. Especially for someone like Darwin, man. I think he's a bit older. The guy's a bit older as well. I'm not sure exact age, but I know he's definitely a bit older. So these weight cuts and stuff, man, starts to wear on your body. And if you're a bit older and you're trying to sort of do it and there's some challenges or hurdles, man, it's gonna mess you up a bit more than if you were 21 as opposed to later on. But yeah, so hopefully they can reschedule that fight and we can sort of see it happen. And then obviously their Saturday event was headlined with Togo and Robbie Lara. I believe Robbie was a last minute replacement. It was kind of short notice. Upper weight class, I think he normally fights at featherweight. And then, obviously came in there against Togo, who was very hyped up, in shape, and ready to get in there and put on a clinic. And that's what he did, got the first round knockout. And, it kind of went as expected for me. I'm a big fan of Josh and the way he fights, and I like his fighting style. It's always entertaining. I was very bummed to see when the way he did lose on Eternal when he lost the belt. So I'm hyped for the dude that he's gotten the win, got himself another shiny sort of belt, and he's got that momentum back. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him moving forward. And then obviously there was a bunch of other local MMA. We had Diamondback taking place in Adelaide doing their Apex Festival thing, which they now do, which they make it a whole day event where from the morning to the afternoon they have just all sorts of different combat sports and martial arts and other sort of sporting competitions, and then they cap the night at the end with the MMA card. So there was some good local action across the board. There was some talented amateurs that got in there and got the opportunity to scrap. Same up in Queensland, you had XFC. A fight that stuck out for me on that one was the middleweight title, Australian middleweight pro title fight between Sam Dobb and Nick Kepu. Sam Dobb is, a giant human being, a very athletic guy, a very strong guy. Another guy I have some questions about with his resume of training and what else he might be doing, but yeah, that's nowhere here nor there. The guy went out there and put on a great performance, got a first round finish, put away the talented Nick Kepu, who's high level striker, got a lot of experience and a lot of skills on the feet. Lacks a bit in the rest.
A bit of an upset, that one.
For people in Queensland, it certainly was. Nick's got a good following behind him as well, and he is very talented. The dude's a talented fighter. He's pretty scrappy. I used to train with him up in Queensland when I was up there. Moved around with him a fair bit, but yeah, the lack of the wrestling and the grappling is something that that kind of was his biggest problem, and unless he changes his ways moving forward, will be his biggest problem. But that's a kind of fight that stuck out for me. in that one. And then, yeah, I unfortunately missed out on actually getting to watch the Bushido card, but I did see that there was some cracker fights from what I've been reading and what other people have been sort of putting out there. But that's cool, like we touched on when we spoke about it and leading up to the event. It's another event, it's another opportunity for amateurs and people to get in there and perform. And it's just adds to building up the sport more and more. So I think, credit to them. They put together what looks like it was a great show, with some great fights and yeah, I'm just stoked. There was a lot of Australian MMA going down on the weekend. A lot of talented fighters got in. Some talented pros. We had some amateurs build up, and keep adding and making their way forward in their journey. Freestyle went 2-0 at Diamondback 2 as well. Two of my teammates fought. So that's always good as well. So yeah, man, I'm just super stoked that MMA is kind of happening. It's happening in multiple states, and we're getting all the fights that we could possibly dream of here on the local scene, and I hope it kind of continues that way.
Absolutely, and certainly we'll continue that way this weekend. We've got Eternal 64 coming up. There's obviously some fun fights on that card. So I thought we might start at the top with that one. The main event is Jack Jenkins versus Rod Costa. Obviously, Costa's a former opponent of yours, and Jack Jenkins was someone who you were booked to fight, but didn't end up sort of going ahead. But the event's been sort of ravaged by cancellations. Before we get to that, obviously they'd lost Kuhn versus Donnelly and Etchell versus Ross. Lost Jesse Medina. I think he was supposed to fight Diego Pereira.
Yep.
It looks like Darcy Vendi might be out of the Matt Myers fight as well at the sort of the bottom end of the main card there. So it has been sort of ravaged. But there's still some fun fights there. Rod Costa, he had a bit of a bee in his bonnet over Jack Jenkins. He's been on the warpath on social media, and he's got his he's got his wish in the end. So it should be interesting to see how it goes down. But how do you think it'll go?
Yeah, it's going to be a fun fight. Obviously, Rod was very vocal about winning that fight. It's been put together now. He's got his wish. The champs obliged him. So we're finally going to get to see, kind of how that one plays out. And stylistically, it's an interesting fight. It's, I think obviously people are still looking at it going, it's the grappler versus striker kind of type deal. But, I think Rod's showing that he's trying to improve his game and be well-rounded. He trains at Scrappy with Ben Vickers and the team there. And, they've obviously got a stable of talented individuals fighting out of there. So I feel like the guy's getting all the opportunities he can ask for to improve his game as a whole. But I think, moving forward into this fight with Jack, I think the key is going to be for him to try and make it an ugly fight, make it gritty, make it a sort of scrap, and try and utilize his grappling as much as he can. Because, Jack hits hard. He's very, very athletic, very strong, very explosive. His wrestling is very good as well. So, he'll be able to keep the fight standing. And if he can keep the fight standing and keep it at range, he can, make it pretty. And that's going to be ultimately where we see him capitalize and take advantage and be able to win the fight. I did talk to Jack about that, the sort of grappling side of things. And, he said he's more than happy to entertain those exchanges with Rod as long as they're on his terms. Obviously, we saw what happened in Rod's last fight. Diego Pereira being a former teammate of mine, former opponent as well. Diego's a very talented fighter, a very talented grappler, just in a pure jiu-jitsu sense as well. And, we kind of saw what Rod was able to do in those grappling exchanges with Diego there and kind of just shut him down completely and shut him out. So I feel like if he can get Jack into those similar positions, you're going to see a similar outcome. It's going to be very hard to deal with. But at the end of the day, this isn't jiu-jitsu, this is MMA. So I feel like, as if Jack stays disciplined and handles that approach to things the way he certainly sounds like he's gonna, it's going to be a pretty rough night for Rod. If he can't find a way to make the reads and adjustments in the fight on the fly and kind of get it to where he needs it to be. But like I kind of said, this fight, looking at it for me, if it looks pretty, it's a Jack Jenkins win. If it's gritty, if it's ugly, if it's a scrap, a la Sean Etchell versus Sam Hibbard, Rod Costa's going to win, and Rod Costa's going to be the new champion. But my prediction for the fight, the way it kind of shapes up, I feel like the first 2 rounds are going to be very entertaining, and I think ultimately in the 3rd round we're going to see Jack Jenkins be able to capitalize and put Rod away.
Yeah, I think that's probably a solid call there. I think the like you touched on there, the big question is whether Rod's going to be able to drag Jack Jenkins down to his world, and Jack's pretty well rounded really. So it's difficult to see sort of how Rod's going to sort of take him down and keep him down. But that's the fun part of it. If he can drag him down, then that's where his advantage is. So it's always a stylistic matchup is always something that's attached to Rod Costa being such a BJJ specialist. So it's going to be interesting to see what he can do on the night.
I mean, I never, like in my fight with Rod, obviously, I didn't get, there wasn't any sort of wrestling or grappling exchanges in the fight, so I can't really speculate on how hard Rod is to deal with in those sort of exchanges. But I have wrestled Jack, I have grappled with Jack, and the dude's not easy to take down, and he's not easy to keep down. So it'll be interesting to see how Rod approaches it. Will we see Rod pull guard and just jump guard and kind of get it that way and try and secure a position that way? Or, will we see Jack come out, take Rod down and kind of throw a spanner in the works that way? And like you said, be on top of him, be dealing with it in his way, in his terms, landing the punches, kind of limiting what you can able to do with the grappling side of things. So I'm interested to see how it all plays out. Obviously, that's a fight I'll be having a close look at, and potentially both guys I could potentially share the cage with moving forward. Who knows? It all depends on how the fight turns out and what happens. But yeah, I'm excited for this fight. And I'm sure it's going to be a delight fight. Delight for the fans when this sort of finally plays out, especially with the build up that there's been.
Absolutely, yeah, it's been a fun one, and I'm sure you'll have a close eye on this one for sure. But also we've got Tristan Mad Dog Murphy, who's riding high off a dominant win over another former Eternal champion in David Martinez. He's taking on Joey Luciano this time from Absolute MMA as well, so teammate of Jack Jenkins by the look of things. So yeah, that looks like a fun matchup as well. Joey Luciano looks pretty solid from what I've seen. He had a win over Blake Shepherd at Eternal 59. How do you view that one?
Yeah, that'd be a good fight. I think, Tristan's had a bit of a resurgence before he came back and fought Martinez. The guy was on like a 3-fight losing streak. I think he just, wasn't really in it, wasn't really his head wasn't really in the game, and was a bit hit the wall a little bit, I think. Just wasn't wasn't in a good place. But since he's been back now, he trains at Combat Training Center. He trains alongside some notable fighters and some talented. He's got some talented coaching and individuals behind him. So, it'll be interested to see how that plays out. Joseph obviously, comes out of Absolute. He's training with some guns and absolute killers there. His last fight was an absolute clinic against Blake Shepherd. The guys are a problem. I mean, both guys are a problem on the mat. Both guys are very strong. Both guys are very big, very athletic. So it's going to be interesting to see how those exchanges take place if it does go to the ground. But obviously on the feet, I feel like it's a pretty, looking at it on paper and stylistically, I think it's a pretty even fight on the feet. Neither guy really stands out with anything that I can kind of put my finger on and go, okay, well, this is going to be a problem. I feel like this fight's going to be decided in the clinches, in the grappling, in the wrestling. Tristan's last fight, obviously he beat Dave Martinez, submitted him. I mean, it was cool to see him, come back after such a big time away and get the win. But, over Dave Martinez is like, I ain't impressed. I mean, obviously, like, I like Dave. I have nothing against the bloke. Don't have really a bad word to say about him. But, I mean, if we're going off that fight, I ain't impressed. So this is Tristan's first fight back after a big break, and it's going to be interesting to see how he handles a legitimate, absolute problem and surging guy in Joseph Luciano, who, I mean, I'm a big fan of. I like watching that guy fight, and we fought on the same night in Melbourne, and watching that, I got to watch that fight before my fight, and it was cool. The guy's very violent, and looks like he throws some absolute bricks when he's in there. So I'm keen to see it play out. I think ultimately, though, if I were to put my finger on it and make a pick for that one, I think Joseph's going to be able to capitalize and get the win.
Yeah, definitely, and yeah, it looks like it's definitely a fan friendly fight on paper. So yeah, it's another one to look forward to. But also on the card, we've got another former opponent of yours, Diego Pereira, as you sort of touched on earlier. He's facing Ryan Gray, who's someone who you were obviously booked opposite as well, and another one that fell through. So it's kind of similar to the main event in that respect. But obviously Ryan's a former Eternal Champion himself. He's been off for I think nearly 4 years, I think thereabouts. And Diego's coming off a loss against, against Rod Costa. So yeah, it's kind of not really a crossroads fight, but it's an important fight for both guys because obviously Gray's been off for a little bit. He never lost his title, so obviously a win over Diego puts him right in the mix. But and Diego Pereira, he's sort of I interviewed him I don't know, maybe late last year, and he has big plans for his career. You know, he talked about champ status, wanting to be a 2 and 3 weight champion in Eternal, and obviously he's now coming off a loss. So and another loss is obviously a big setback to those sorts of plans. So it's an important fight for both guys. But yeah, how do you break that one down?
Yeah, it's an interesting fight. I mean, I'll believe that the fight's happening when I actually see that both guys are on the scale and they've weighed in and it's actually going forward. I hope it does happen. That'd be another cool fight to watch on the card, and stylistically could be quite exciting and entertaining. And it's credit to Ryan too, being in such a breakaway, coming back, not trying to get himself a sort of, I guess, easy sort of matchup with someone else, like a potential up and coming person, and kind of, find his feet a little bit. The guy's going straight into it and jumping in there with someone like Diego, who obviously, he's dangerous, he's talented, and he's been active this whole time that Ryan's been away. So, full credit to him and respect to him that he's getting straight back in there, trying to get himself back in the mix and get back the belt that he never lost. And hopefully, he's injury free and healthy and makes it to the fight. And then obviously, Diego, he's coming off a loss. It was a tough fight against Rod in his last outing, but I feel like Diego's gonna come in. He's gonna be ready for this sort of fight and be able to kind of capitalize and do his thing. It's just going to depend on, like you sort of said, he spoke to you and he's got all these plans and things that he highlighted. But I think for Diego, sometimes, I used to train with Diego. He's a former teammate of mine before I moved down to freestyle. I trained at Southside alongside him. So we obviously shared the mats a bunch over the years. We did a lot of work together. Obviously, I know Diego quite well. I think for Diego, sometimes he's looking a bit too far ahead when he could be a bit more focused on what's presented in front of him. It's not a bad thing to have those goals and those things for you, like that you kind of want to achieve, but sometimes you got to kind of put the brakes on stuff like that and just focus on what's in front of you. But from what I've heard and what's been relayed to me by my coach, my former coach, Paul Stolia, I think Diego's primed, he's ready, he's in shape, he's focused, he's corrected the mistakes he made in the fight with Rod, and he's coming to put on another performance, and I guess wants to come in there and put on a show like he did in his fight against Michael Tobin when he secured that win via head kick. I think that's sort of what Diego wants to come out there and do. And if he comes out and uses all his weapons that he has, not just the striking and the flashy sort of striking that he likes to kind of portray when he's in there, and flowy sort of style that he has on the feet, he's got to mix it up as a whole and give Ryan a lot more problems. He's got to give Ryan all the problems that he's capable of giving him with the tools that he has. And then he can make the fight, quite easy for himself. But if he, isn't offering all those things for Ryan, I think we're going to be able to see Ryan make it scrappy, kind of pull out one of these crazy finishes, because the opportunities are just being given to him to work, instead of him being on the back foot, him being the one that's kind of freezing up, going, oh, what's happening? What's coming my way? He needs to, for either guy, it needs to be a problem that you need to give the other guy a problem to solve and keep that problem constantly in their face. You can't give them a moment or time to adjust and breathe and be able to do their own thing and get comfortable, because then you're going to be in for a long night. And I'm sure that both guys are giving each other the full respect. And I think, regardless of Ryan's time off, you kind of have to with the guy. The guy is obviously, he's dangerous and he can, pull out some pretty crazy things here and there. So, it'd be an interesting fight. I feel like it's going to be, it's going to live up to the hype. I don't see a finish in the fight. I don't think either guy's going to be able to put the other guy away. I feel like it's going to be 3 rounds. It's going to be a chess match, and it's going to be, a tightly contested fight. But ultimately, it's going to go to a decision. My hands are sort of up in the air about who potentially is going to win, because, it's hard. I know one guy obviously in that matchup quite well. Have shared the cage with him. I've shared lots of time in the mats with him. I've sparred countless rounds with the guy. I know him quite well. So I could make a prediction based on those things, but I'm trying to look at it independently and as a fight fan and someone that's just hyped for the matchup. And the way I see it going with from that sort of side of things, I just see it being an absolute proper scrap, and it's going to go to a decision. And I don't really know who I'm leaning towards in that one. So it's kind of a bit up in the air for me.
That's what you want, is a genuine 50-50 fight. They're the best ones. Who's going to win? Who knows? You just got to tune in and watch and just enjoy it. So that's definitely not a bad thing. As
you said too, this fight's been plagued with a bunch of pullouts and injuries and shit that's happened. Like obviously Medina was meant to fight Diego Pereira, got injured. So he had to pull out, and obviously Ryan stepped in, and you've had all these other fights fall through, like the Donnelly Josh Kuhn fight, which is a weird one because obviously Josh is injured, and then hey man, I'm just calling it like I see it. The dude pulled out of the fight. Apparently he's injured, but then I'm seeing videos and photos of the guy sparring and shit like that. So.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So I have questions. Look, Josh, I like you, a lot of respect for you. I think it's cool what you're doing. And you obviously outside of the cage, you're doing a bunch of awesome things and stuff like that. You look like you're just, all about helping people and doing the right thing and all sort of stuff like that. And obviously you're a talented MMA fighter, but let's be honest, man. Like, did you pull out of the fight because you're injured, or did you pull out of the fight just because you just couldn't be asked to fight someone like Blake? I don't know. But I'm sure I'll find out.
Probably a step up in class for him, wasn't it, Blake Donnelly?
100%. And then, obviously the Shannon Ross, Sean Etchell fight being moved, that's moved to the Melbourne card now. That's going to be a dope fight. It's taking place at flyweight. That'll be a cool scrap to see eventually come to fruition. But hopefully the rest of these fights come together. Hopefully we get to see them play out and there's no further interruptions. But on the off that, one of these featherweights, for whatever reason, can't make it to the fight, Cam knows who to call.
Yeah, he's always ready. Justin Van Heerden, always ready, always just waiting by the phone. So there you go, Cam O'Neill. Yeah, holler at your boy if you need a featherweight. But definitely not a bantamweight though. We've tried that before, right?
Yeah, we tried that on short notice. That didn't quite. But that was a gamble, that one. But I feel like you give me a proper camp, proper notice with my team and my nutritionist. I feel like we could do the bantamweight thing, but I just don't need to. I feel comfortable. I feel the best at where I'm at now, especially with how things are now, working with the team from the Fight Dietitian and stuff like that. So we'll just stay where we are at featherweight and keep doing what I'm doing.
Sounds like a solid plan. And just one more fight I wanted to touch on from Eternal 64 was Rocky Ogden. He's obviously a well-credentialed Muay Thai fighter. He trains at Boonchu Gym with John Wayne Parr, and now your mate Reece McLaren, who's over there at the moment. So he's taking on Matt Seedon, who's 0-3. But it's probably more of a curiosity, really. He hasn't had any, as far as I can tell, Rocky hasn't had any amateur MMA fights. So he's sort of going straight in there, and it's just going to be sort of fascinating to see how he transitions over, sort of how much grappling he's got under his belt, and So what do you know about that one?
Yeah, first off, I'm super confused because I thought Rocky was fighting for one championship, but I guess some things have happened and played out there. But it'd be cool to see the guy transition to MMA. Obviously, credentialed striker, trains at Boonchu, works alongside John Wayne Parr. I mean, it'll be an interesting fight to see how it plays out. I feel like you've seen a lot of these people from Boonchu recently switch over to MMA, and they've had quite they've done quite well and had some success. You know, proven that they're taking it seriously and you know, approaching it with all the respect. So I feel like Rocky's going to be the same. And I feel like the fight that they're giving him is a good kind of feeler, you know, fight to kind of dip your toes in the water and kind of, you know, see what this MMA thing's about and see if it's something that you're pretty keen on and if you're, you know, really going to be about it. You know, obviously, yeah, it's going to come down to how Rocky's able to implement his striking. Because obviously in MMA, in kickboxing, it's fine. You can just go there and you can go back and forth, and same with the Muay Thai. But, you know, in MMA, even if the other person doesn't take you down or doesn't involve the grappling or anything like that, those variables are still there. So the range is different, the timing's different. You know, there's a bit of hesitation there if you're someone who predominantly likes to strike, because in the back of your mind, you constantly have to be like, oh, is he going to shoot? Oh, but, you know, you have to, and you're going to start kind of seeing that kind of happen. So, yeah, I feel like it's going to be an interesting fight. It's going to be interesting to see how he approaches this MMA thing. And obviously, being at Bunchu, he's got an incredible sort of individual in John Wayne Parr that he kind of hones his striking with and stuff like that. And obviously, for the MMA side of things, Daniel Almeida, who is one of the most credentialed Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts in the country, and obviously has the MMA experience behind him as well. He's sort of the head up of the MMA side of program and Jiu-Jitsu sort of stuff. So, you know, the guy's got access to a really good coach in Daniel as well, and student of the game and a guy with a lot of experience. I'm very fond of that guy. So, you know, it'd be interesting to see how they combine the two. And like I've said so far, for the other people from Bunchu, it's come together quite nicely and worked well. You know, the joining forces of Almeida and John Wayne Parr. So you've got, you know, you're spoiled for choice. You're quite blessed. So, you know, if you're a predominantly stand-up fighter who's looking to transition into MMA and you're like, how am I going to go about this? It looks like Bunchu's the place to do it.
Absolutely, yeah. They got a few of them having a go at it, and I interviewed John Wayne Parr, obviously, as I mentioned last week, and he mentioned his daughter Jazzy's also. Her ultimate goal is to make it into MMA. She's fighting in boxing at the moment because she's got a buggered hip, and she's hasn't been able to do the kickboxing or anything like that. But her ultimate goal is the UFC. So yeah, well, I guess we'll see how it plays out. We'll see how Rocky goes in MMA on the weekend, and you know, it's going to be an interesting test case for their whole gym. Really, I don't know that they've got that many MMA fighters in their ranks at the moment.
Yeah, there's a couple of amateurs that they've had on a few shows. Yeah, so there's, you know, they're slowly building it up. Obviously, it's a fresh sort of thing with them having the jiu-jitsu and MMA sort of stuff added to their syllabus and their timetables and stuff like that. So obviously, you know, they're still kind of finding their way a bit and having the sort of roster build up a bit. But there's a few people. There's a guy that fought on Eternal when I fought Toby Meach, and he fought one of my teammates on the night, my old teammates, and the guy put on a show, man. I thought for sure, I was like, because the guy that he fought, my old teammate, his wrestling and grappling's, you know, disgusting. So I thought he was going to be able to take him down and just, yeah, handedly take him down and keep him there and just do work, because obviously there was just going to be too much of a gap. But the guy, I forget his name, I forget his first name. His last name's Kolovos. I think he's headlining the upcoming Proving Grounds card against Jaden Dalrymple from Makai MMA. I think it's Dan Kolovos. Might be Dan Kolovos. Yeah, he's very tall, very lanky, very rangy, fights at featherweight. And yeah, he's someone that kind of stands out from Bunchu that was able to kind of transition over to the MMA side of things and look the goods. So if Rocky's approached it the same way and handling it the same way, I'm sure he's going to be just fine.
Absolutely, and we're about to go overtime here, but you know what? It's our show, so you know, everyone can hang around if they're still if they're still interested. But this weekend we've also got UFC Volkov versus Aspinall, and we've got an Anzac representative there in Dan Hooker. I thought it was worth touching on this because it's a bit of an interesting matchup. This one, it's a dangerous one for Dan Hooker because obviously Arnold Allen's is a really good prospect. You know, he's I mean, Dan Hooker's a step up in class for him. I mean, Arnold Allen's got wins over an aging Gilbert Melendez. He's beaten Nick Lentz. He beat Sodiq Yusuff in his last fight, which is a good win. But Dan Hooker's probably a step up in class. But for Hooker's part, he's 1-3 in his past 4 fights, obviously against top class opposition. The losses were against Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler, and Islam Makhachev. So obviously no mugs in that lineup there. But it's a tough opponent for him, and another loss could possibly sort of leave him in a potential gatekeeper status if he's sort of fighting these up and coming guys and. Alternating wins and losses, then that could be where he's headed. So it's an important fight for him. But it's a fun one. So I thought I just wanted to get your thoughts on that one before we wrap up tonight.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how it plans out. I'm interested to see, from what I can see, the guys approaching everything the right way with, obviously cutting that extra bit of weight again. And he's obviously works with the fight dietitian team and works with Geordie and those boys. So he's obviously approaching it the right way, and he looks like he's in shape and, ready to go. Like you sort of said, Arnold Allen's a bit of an interesting matchup for him to have back at featherweight. The dude's a surging prospect, very talented fighter. But, I've got to go with Dan Hooker in this matchup. The guy's very, 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 very big for the weight class. Like he's super tall for when he was fighting at lightweight, super long. He's got, his frame is such a strange.
He looks huge.
Yeah, it's strange, long frame.
Massive.
Looks like it just makes no sense how the guy, even got down to lightweight, and now he's going to be fighting back at featherweight. But obviously Dan Hooker's an absolute animal, and when he's on, and like you said, his losses are against the best of the best in the lightweight division. And obviously it's going to be interesting to see if the guy. My only thought was if he was just kind of cutting that extra weight and wasn't doing it the right way, but then there'd be some sort of questions. But he is doing that. So I feel like he's going to come in there in shape, ready, and just, I think he's going to put on a show. I think he's going to be too long, too tall, too experienced, and too much for Allen in this matchup. I feel like we're going to see Dan bounce back into the win column in a very violent way and get a TKO or a knockout. And then, I think that's going to be a good first outing for him back at featherweight, and then it'll be interesting to see how it sort of pans out moving forward. Obviously, stylistically, in that division, there's a few guys, when you look at it, how styles match up in the fights, he's a problem for, a big problem for, being that he is the height that he has, the length that he has, the reach that he has, the experience that he has now. Obviously, Dan's been around the game for a while now and been around the UFC for a while. He's kind of like the lead horse for City Kickboxing over there. Important fight for him, because if he loses, then I don't think he'll get cut, but potentially the guy could get cut. I mean, the UFC's made a bunch of changes to their roster. They've dropped certain people that I didn't think they would even drop based on a couple of unfortunate outings that they had. But the UFC is just they're so spoiled with talent at the moment across the board, and like we spoke on last time, especially here in the Oceanic region and stuff like that, and they've got their PI in China, where they're building up talent and up and coming fighters as well. So, they're sort of, if the opportunity is there for them to sort of swap someone out and sub someone new in, they're going to take that. Obviously, I don't hope that happens to Dan. I hope that he kind of stays in, does his thing, and I hope he does well. And as a fan of the sport, I want to see the guy go on a run at featherweight, fight some of these top featherweights. There's some interesting matchups, like him and Ortega would be an absolute dope scrap. Him and Max Holloway would be an incredible scrap. Him and Calvin Kattar would be a great scrap. Him and Giga would be a great scrap. Obviously, if he can build his way up, he could, potentially stand across from Volko, and that could be a matchup that we see play out one day. Who knows? Certainly an important fight for him. It's an all or nothing sort of fight for Dan Hooker. So I hope he can come out, get the result, and represent for the Anzacs and kick this thing off in the right way.
I love that Hooker versus Giga fight. The bloody Justin Van Heerden coming out with the bangers every week. There's just dream matchups just being dropped left, right, and center, and you just throw them out there just like it's nothing. Like it's just
honestly,
pop straight out of the back of your head.
If you're,
I know the UFC watches this show, obviously. So,
100%.
Sign this guy up. Brilliant matchmaker.
If you need a matchmaker, and that's the thing, if any promoters in Australia, if you've stumped on some matchups, you need some help, I'm your guy. I can make it happen. I can come up with some good stuff.
Absolutely, but yeah, back on Dan Hooker, I think he gets a bit of a pass from the UFC for obviously taking the Makhachev fight on short notice, and obviously like we talked about earlier with the Nasrat sort of situation, he basically flew in, weighed in, fought, jet lagged. I think he's got enough runs on the board that he'll get more opportunities at UFC level, and like you say, at featherweight, it's going to be an interesting watch if he is sort of still physically able. Once he's sort of sucked down to that weight, then there's some brilliant matchups there for him, and stylistically, yeah, like you say, he's a problem. So it's going to be a fun watch to see sort of what he can do at featherweight, and whether he can do it in a way that he's sort of healthy on fight night.
Yeah, 100%. Because obviously, fighting a lightweight, the guy had some absolute scraps at lightweight. Some of those fights that take some years off your life, and some of those, really, really hard fights. Like the Poirier fight, like the fight, the Felder fight, the Edson fight, but that's upper weight class. At lightweight, you're cutting less weight. Your body's in better, is a bit better off cutting less weight. There's a bit more fluid around your brain, and all those sort of things. I'm no scientist, but all those things, they play a factor, and they're probably, it's better off for you. Like you said, he's going to be a bit more sucked out, regardless of doing it with these professionals and doing it the right way. It's going to still take a bit of an extra toll on your body, dropping down to a whole other weight class again. And then, is he going to be able to wear the damage if it is thrown his way, like he was able to in those fights, like the Felder fight, the Poirier fight, the Barbosa fight, where ultimately he didn't quit, but his body just was like, all right, I've had enough. Because obviously there's no quit in the guy. He won't ever quit, I don't think. But, if you're down a weight class and that you're taking that damage, your body's not going to be able to sustain it as easy as you were when you were up, fighting up in weight.
Absolutely, and who else there's no quit in? Fight Talk Down Under. We're now six episodes in, many more to come. There will be no quit. Remember everyone to like and subscribe. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Podbean, and Fight News Australia. Still no Apple Podcasts, so I've given up on that for a little bit. So you can sort of cancel your subscriptions with them and focus in on
yeah.
On
there's no content on Apple that's worth viewing if we're not on there. So
definitely not, absolutely not. Yeah, so you may as well just cancel it now. It's useless. So, but once again, keep your eyes peeled to Fight News Australia YouTube channel. I've got the JWP. Interview dropping this week. That's all I've got sort of coming out at the moment. Of course, he's got a huge fight coming up, which we'll break down on Fight Talk Down Under episode 7. We will be breaking down the John Wayne Parr retirement fight, and we'll recap all the action on Eternal 64. And of course, there'll be much more to cover on that front. What else have you got going on, Justin?
Yeah, I think from my point, there's Well, hopefully by the time we record episode 7, I'll have some idea on my next matchup, which I think at the moment we're trying to get on that April 23rd card in Melbourne, so I could fight in Melbourne and fight alongside Colby, and we can go out there and get out there and put on a show together. But I think hopefully by the end of the week I'll have something locked in if it sort of gets put together. But yeah, I'm hyped to see that interview with John Wayne Parr. Obviously, big fan of John Wayne, and excited to see him kind of, like we spoke about, get in there, get a win, and ride off into the sunset, retire, and be done off a big win.
Absolutely, and we might even have an exclusive announcement on the next Lockjaw matchup there on episode 7. So until then, everyone, thanks for watching or listening.
Yeah, well, watching, listening, wherever you are in the world, we appreciate it. I'm sure we're hitting those worldwide kind of listeners now.
I gotta watch it, you never know what might stop you. Here I